think anybody else knows. I think you're guessing.
Hello. Line you're on the air.
Hi.
We're looking forward to talking with you.
Hi.
Yeah. Sorry, I got to get a little technology under control here. Okay. Now, this is John Watson. Who am I talking with?
Is it who?
This is John Watson.
John Welch. What can I do for you?
Yeah, John Welch. This is John Watson.
John, you know we don't allow you on the program.
Well, you said the only way I could call is if it was a debate negotiation.
Well, I didn't say we were going to negotiate on the air, John.
Well, why not?
Well, because I don't do that on the air.
We could.
I won't do it to you. You don't do it to me.
We
I'd
could.
be glad to arrange a debate with you. You know how we can do it.
I've been trying to arrange a debate with you for 3 years, John. I don't understand why you won't just do it. Okay, guys. So you heard that. That was live. He just totally cut me off.
Don't do that on the air. I won't do it to you. You don't do it to me. But I'd be glad to arrange a debate.
Okay, so let's.
I've been trying to arrange a debate
This here.
for 3 years, John.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
He has said in the past that he would never debate with me. That I was an evil
That
man
is-
and no good.
That is so not true.
He said I'm a coward. He's called me all sorts of names.
Whoa.
But he's been ready to do it
He
for 3 years.
he's the one that called me a
I
coward.
stood in his church building and challenged him to a debate.
You stood in the church building and called me a coward. You, John, see, you're not right.
I was surrounded by his members
You're
and
not right at
virtually
all.
hounded out of the building.
Okay,
But
so
he's been
let's
ready
see if I
for
can.
3 years. Okay.
Let's kind of listen to what.
John, we can arrange a debate. It's really simple. It's not complicated. You can write that address, the church's address,
Here's-
3103 North
Here you go,
High
guys.
School Road.
Call
Here
him
in
right now.
Indianapolis.
317-257-3000 and tell him we can have this debate done and over right now. Plain and
Need a
simple.
little time to concentrate, and you should take some time to think about it too. And I do that through
Yeah,
letter.
317-257-3000. Call John Welch. Yeah, I'm telling you, if you are there, call him. Say, hey, what are you afraid of, John? John Welch? Why do you keep lying? Why do you keep lying? Just constantly lie about this whole thing. I really, truthfully think I got you on camera here too, Trent. Oh no, I didn't. I got to transition. I really, truthfully think he simply doesn't want to do it. Otherwise, he would do this. 317-257. It's right there on the screen. 257-3000. Call him right now. Flood his phone lines. This is just crazy.
The reason why he doesn't want to do a negotiation online in front of everybody is because he makes such ridiculous requests, says some awful things, and he wants to keep it private.
Yeah.
And the thing is that he never will budge on anything. It's either his way completely or no way. There's no negotiation. That's why he won't do it publicly. He won't negotiate publicly because he will not give and take on anything. And that's the way it is with all these guys. They won't call the program and talk because they're afraid that they can't answer something in real time. So they want a written debate, or they want 6 months or a year to prepare, and then they bring in 15 different guys to help them do it, or they have guys help them write a debate. Patrick Andrews is one of those guys that does that, where he challenges people to a written debate, and he can't because he's afraid to call in, and he can't answer in real time, so he gets his cheerleaders involved. John Welch is the same way.
Yeah. 317-257-3000. Call John Welch. Call him right now. He's on live, and he refuses to negotiate. Everything has to be his way, 100% or no way whatsoever.
The propositions have to be his way. The number of nights, where it's located at, the time.
He won't even give the date when he wants to do it. He said he needs 6 months, and then he gave 8 months from now as a possibility. Guys, 317-257-3000. Call John Welch and say, hey, John, whether if you agree with him or don't agree with him, call him up and say, what is wrong with you? Why will you not just talk to this man? It sounds like he's scared to me. I mean, that's what he's constantly said about me.
Well, I did actually send a question in to him on one of their programs a few weeks ago, and they blocked me from it.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I can't respond anymore.
I think he's implying the problem some people have.
317-257-3000. Give him a call. He's still got 6 minutes. They probably won't even answer it.
But here's the thing.
317-257-3000.
Here's the thing. These guys go out and they beat their chest like King Kong, like they're the most powerful and most knowledgeable biblical scholars out in the world. And then when you ask them to call in to the program or to debate, they need 6 months, 8 months, a year, or they can't call in. They want to do a written debate.
I'll tell you what he's waiting on. Jesus to return.
So they're all alike.
Get him out of it.
They're all cut from the same cloth.
How about Ed Rangel? He's on there right now. Why not you, Ed? If John's not willing to debate, maybe you'd be much more honorable in your dealings here. It's amazing. He just flat lied and said I called him a coward and all this other stuff. He came into our congregation. He's the one that called me a coward. He just lies. I cannot understand how a Christian can justify that. I mean, he must have a pathological problem with lying.
And I'm telling you, dishonesty seems to be the character trait of these people, or many of them anyway. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Make all kinds of outrageous claims, insult, lie, misrepresent, deflect. It's just amazing.
I bet you his sidekick, what's his name? Oh, I just went blank on it. I bet he'd be more willing to debate than John Welch is, truthfully.
Amen.
317-257-3000. A panel of preachers is awaiting your question and will deal with your question.
Except for John.
Except for John Welch. And except when someone calls in who actually knows what they're talking about and he doesn't want to talk to them.
Yeah, this is the starting point.
I can't think of his name. Is this one of those mental blocks that I have to deal with all the time? Yeah, so we're just listening to this a little bit. We're going to get into talking to some things. I wish somebody would call him. He was probably blocking everybody. I don't see any more comments there. Because they blocked Roy, who called them earlier, and he can't make any more comments. It's
okay.
It's pitiful, absolutely pitiful. Yeah, so I'm going to send Roy a message. I'm going to say, hey, Roy, they blocked me too. Roy, they cut me off too. So, hey, Roy, welcome to the club.
Yeah, those guys in Texas.
Oh yeah, he heard it. Says he heard it. So, yeah. You know, I put Roy up to that. I said, "Hey, Roy, call in. I want you to answer or ask this specific question." Hey, I encourage everybody to call John Welch. This is no secret. I don't care who you are. Call him. If you 100% agree with him, call him and say, "Hey, why won't you just negotiate with this guy?" So, I got on there, and they just cut me off. Just plain old cut me off. And totally ignored it. Look at this. They're completely and totally ignoring this. Without question. Oh, man. So how are you supposed to debate a guy if he goes around all the time beating his chest and saying, John Watson will not debate me? I've been trying for 3 years to debate him. My terms were on the table. If he really wanted to debate, he just could say, yeah, I'll do that. But he doesn't want to. John Welch obviously does not want to debate. He's just simply deflecting. Yeah, he's got 2 more minutes. 317-257-3000. Call him up. Say, hey, listen, dude, what's your deal? I would. I did. I tried, and he just cut me off,
You may have to do something about this.
which is what they all do. They can't answer us. They don't like what we stand for. If I had been a Mormon, a Jehovah's Witness, a Baptist, a Pentecostal, the Pope, he would not have treated me that way. He would not have cut me off. He would have argued with me until his program was over, till their computers ran out of memory. I guarantee you that. So it's obvious he simply doesn't want to debate. Look at that. There he is, guys. There's the face of someone who will not debate, someone who's deceptive, someone who will not be honorable, and just deal with this situation. And he said, did you hear him? He said, well, I don't watch his videos. I know that he watches my videos. Go to Restoration Movement 2.0 on YouTube on the playlist of these debate negotiations, which is only on me. I'm trying every way in the world to debate with him. And I guarantee you he has watched them. He lied about that. He says that he watched them. Just go and watch. He's answering the questions and the propositions and so forth. So he simply won't do it. Let's try this one more time.
He'll learn more as time goes on.
Hebrews 6:1,
What do you think?
I think.
No.
applies. Therefore, leaving the elementary
No.
teaching
Let us hang
about
up on that.
Christ,
Yeah.
let us press on to
I mean,
maturity, not lazy,
you know what his character is.
So
Yeah.
there were some
Dishonorable.
things that had to be taught.
Amen.
And I'm not saying that
And then
to be mean. I'm saying it because it's the truth. All you gotta do is look and see. That's
What are
it.
you grinning? What time is it? Oh my goodness. Ed, where's the Huey?
You're out of time.
It was those
Poor
prejudices
guy.
on topic.
Yeah.
The preterists got him off topic. Yeah, they want to run from
Where's
it.
the Huey Township?
2047 High School Road, Hueytown, Alabama.
What's High School Road? That's where we are.
You know, 1952 is what I'm told here.
Okay.
At 9:30 a.m. on Sunday, 7 p.m. on Wednesday nights.
I think
Well,
you're gonna
well.
You told me you're gonna live stream
Okay.
the service
So
We have been.
I am going to press the
so they can look.
I'm gonna press the button. Okay. Okay. So let's do this. Okay. Hold me back, Trent. Hold me back. I heard my wife in there. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, we can have a little bumper music here. We think. Okay, so we gotta have our opening logo. Let's start with a little bit of. All right, there we go. So we're gonna mute this guy.
And I must go to meet the deeds.
You absolutely meet the deeds that you have done.
There will be no setting sun.
Okay, here we go. Now we have officially started.
Okay.
It's official.
Okay.
Okay, there you go. Okay, guys. So I'm gonna do something here. For a moment, I have to pull this up here. Okay, as we get started here, I'm going to try to illustrate to you all exactly what I have been trying to do with John Welch. So we're just gonna do this. This was my last attempt at working out a debate scenario. Negotiating this debate. So essentially, here's the way this works. Here's the things that we agreed on because he watched my videos, even though he said he didn't. He did, because he answered them. So there's no way around that. Matter of fact, not only did he answer them, he pulled up my video that I had made the answer from. So here's what we agree on. The debate will be held at High School Road Church of Christ. That each night, that each one has the the right to record and broadcast and distribute equally. 30-minute alternating speeches, and we agreed that his proposition to affirm is acceptable. He wants me to change my proposition. He wanted to state it and me argue it the way he wants it argued. That tells you one thing, that he's not at all firm in his conviction on his own beliefs, so he has to dictate the proposition. So he says, I said, hey, I'd like to have a 10-minute summary at the end of each night. He will never do that, I promise you. If I do not, this is the way this debate goes. It went this way with Howard Denham. It was the same way that when he negotiated with Don Preston, it had to be his way or no way whatsoever. So when Holger and Howard were negotiating, it had to be Howard's way. Every time, every debate, I'll tell you, the only honorable man that I've debated has been Ron Daly. Ron Daly worked with me and treated me with respect and love as a Christian. Plain and simple. John Welch hasn't done that. Ron Daly did. All the others have been very condescending, very, like there's been many, there's 3 others, but 3, right? Yeah, well, either way, they've all been condescending, very rude, think that they're self-righteous and so forth. Anyway, here's my proposition. Okay, why is this such a big deal? It's my proposition that I want to affirm, and he wants to tell me what I have to affirm. Only because he wants to set me up. Well, whatever. My proposition, the scriptures teach that the resurrection of the dead ones would occur within the generation to whom Jesus spoke. That shouldn't be a big deal. Here's what I said I would do, John. This is relinquishing some back to you, right? If you'll agree to my propositions, I will do 4 nights. We'll do Monday. I suggested we do September 21 and 22, 24 and 25. It's right there on the calendar. I put red X's there so you could have no problem whatsoever seeing what I was proposing. Hey, if you're not good with that date, let me know. Let's figure it out. So these are things we still need to agree on. Are we going to have a 10-minute summary? Are you going to be so obstinate that you will not do that? 2, what about my proposition? Okay, can we agree on 4 nights, or do you think that you can't do 4 nights and you only need 2? And the date. That's it. I mean, this is just super, super simple. What do you think, Trent?
It seems simple if people are willing to negotiate and give and take. It's not too difficult. But when you have to set the proposition and it's got to be worded in an exact way, then what you do is you're forcing the affirmatives and the negatives to be worded in a certain way. And to me, you should be able to give one proposition. He should be able to give one proposition.
Yeah, I mean, why does it have to be? Does it have to be so hard? It really, truthfully does not.
It isn't unless you're worried that you're going to lose. Because I mean, it's the problem with him is that he thinks he's some fantastic Boston lawyer from Harvard, and he beats his chest like King Kong, and he's neither. He's neither.
Yeah, that he does. Which is sad, but hey, it's what I'm stuck with. Truthfully, if he ever debates me, I'll be completely surprised, because I mean, this has been going on for 3 years. 3 years. He knew if he truly wanted to debate me, he knew that he could have done 2 days, 1 week and 2 days the next week. I would have done that. So it's obvious that he doesn't want to do this. So let's talk about this attitude.
Yeah, even in a court of law, you have a prosecution side, you have a defense side. They negotiate throughout in accordance to the laws, the written law. Okay. One doesn't say, well, you can't, I'm not going to allow you to present this evidence because it may damage my case.
Yeah.
And that's what he tries to do. And we're not going to let you argue this point of law because it damages my case. I mean, we just saw this in an impeachment process in the House of Representatives and then a trial in the Senate.
Yeah.
What happens when one side dominates and makes all the rules? it turns into a fiasco, and it never accomplishes anything. It just wastes a lot of time and money, and it just causes more division. And this is what this futurism brings to Christianity. Look what it's done to man for last 200-300 years in the United States.
Yeah.
It has basically turned the church upside down, and people are believing all kinds of false premises about future events, present events, reading themselves into the Bible of historical events that happened 1950 years ago, and it just a myriad of problems when one side dominates the discussion and shuts down any kind of evidence or any kind of discussion that could change the direction of the way people think. And you and I, we get accused of this all the time, don't we?
All the time.
And all we're saying is just answer some of these questions. You don't have to attack us. Just answer these questions, but they can't answer the questions. They attack.
Okay, I just had an idea. Had to write down there. Okay, so
This sermon that I don't know where you want to go from here, but
hey, we will just okay. So this guy Jonathan Gullah, which he's got some good advice there. See what he says?
yeah,
You need a third party uninterested mediator.
yeah.
John, give him a call.
Well, I know
257-3000, 317-257-3000.
I know Jonathan. He's a good man.
Is he?
Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He's very level-headed, reasonable type guy.
Mm-hmm.
I first met him in Costa Rica, and he's an expat. He's a good man, and he has a good way of approaching things. So the problem is, though, Jonathan, is that this John Welch will not ever agree to a third party to come in and negotiate. This guy, you don't really know his history like we do. He's here local in Indianapolis, and he's really a piece of art, and the way he acts and his attitude. But the sermon that you preached Sunday was really good.
Thanks.
About the coronavirus and how people panic and how this panicking stems from a partial lack of knowledge or understanding of the Bible. And you see it. There's a thing called K-Love on Facebook. I guess it must be a national radio program that has this K-Love call sign or whatever. But there are always comments on there, and there have been just it's been overwhelmed with the comments on there about the coronavirus and that this being a sign of the end times. And people talking about rapture, talking about the mark of the beast with our government and governments throughout the world that are putting restrictions on travel. They're closing down businesses. Even some in the United States are banning the sale of firearms, alcohol, ammunition, and any gatherings of 50 or more. They're shutting down schools, live events, concerts, sport events, and people are looking at bits and pieces of the New Testament, especially Revelation, and saying, "Oh my, this is the end of the world. Christ is going to come back at any time," and they're worried about the government's overreach of power, which can happen in this instance. It can happen if people begin to panic, and that's what you see in the stores. So people are thinking that these governments, or that there's an antichrist coming that will make everybody wear this mark of the beast on their forehead and on their hands. And if they don't have this and they don't worship this beast, then, they're basically doomed.
Yeah.
They become prey for everybody else, and they're destroyed in this. But does the Bible teach that?
Nope.
No, the Bible doesn't teach that. This comes from, in my opinion, from talking to people and having friends in all different Christian faiths and all different beliefs, that very few people, and this is the fault of the leadership in the church, the ministers, and the fault of the Christians for not studying the prophecies in the Old Testament, because the prophecies of the New Testament all come from the prophecies of the Old Testament. The Old Testament is concerned about the creation of the covenant of Moses, and it carrying through to the end of the covenant and an establishment of this new covenant where Christ is the King, Lord, and Savior. So if you don't read and you don't understand the prophecies or study the Old Testament, 2/3 of the book, you are not going to understand the New Testament, the remaining third. You're going to read yourself into this because you're going to set aside biblical hermeneutics, and biblical hermeneutics are the principles that guide our study, and such as audience relevance is key in this. Audience relevance is basically, what did the original audience understand about what they were reading or what they were preached to or taught? And that's true in the Old Testament, and it's true in the New Testament. Then there's a thing called analogy of faith. As Christians, our faith, and you hear this repeated many times, the Bible never contradicts itself. Never, ever does it contradict itself. So the Bible, in that essence, has to define itself. In other words, we cannot take 21st century meanings of English words that are 1950 years removed from the Koine Greek from which the Bible was written, the New Testament was written. We cannot put those words into the Greek meaning of the Koine Greek from up to about, I don't know, what was it? It lasted maybe 220, 250 years, this Greek language. And it was very specific in its meanings, where in English, we have words that have multiple meanings, and it can mean several different things. So if we violate audience relevance and we violate the analogy of faith, that the Bible does not contradict itself, there's also another one, time statements, historical time statements. The Bible is filled with historical time statements, and you must read those statements according to the context of the scripture based upon the audience relevance and the analogy of faith that the Bible defines itself. The Bible is the best dictionary there is because it sets the context of what we're studying. You have anything to add to this? Or are you just kind of disconnected right now?
No. I'm listening, but we have a technical problem. Got to figure out.
Okay.
So you keep on going.
Okay. So everybody is concerned about what we see in the news. It's really in social media everywhere. From what I understand, I'm not involved in all these different social medias, but I am on Facebook, and I see it on Facebook quite a bit. This New World Order, this NWO, there's a group called Q or QAnon that is supposedly an inside group and is aware of these clandestine operations among the U.S. government. And I mean, I have to be honest with you, I think it's a joke. I think it's a bunch of people wishing and wanting things to happen. But of all the predictions I've ever seen from this group, they're always happening, but then the evidence is never there that they're happening. They will predict or say such and such, so-and-so was arrested and they're down in Guantanamo Bay now. and there's going to be a military tribunal. They're going to be executed, or they have been executed. Then the next day, you see them on a live telecast giving a speech or something like that. But then Q turns around and says, "Oh no, that was recorded before they were arrested." See, so I mean, it's the same thing that applies to these people with these doomsday, apocalyptic, end of the world scenario futurists that we have in the church that's going out, spreading this panic and this hysteria. It's just not in the Bible. The Perusia, which is means appearing, was done. Christ appeared a second time for salvation, as Hebrews 9 says, that he was going to appear the second time apart from sin, but unto salvation. If you're a Christian and you claim today that you don't have salvation, then you might want to check your faith, because Christ has completed and fulfilled this prophecy and the work that God has given him to do. If not, then Christ is not our Savior. He is not the Lord. He's not the Son of God. Now, who is going to make that claim? So either Christ is correct and man is wrong, or man is correct and Christ is wrong. You can't have it both ways, folks.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of address this mark of the beast thing, if you can.
Yeah, go right ahead. I'm
Okay.
still trying to figure this out, because apparently we're only going out to just a handful of people.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll just keep going, because if that's the case, it's being recorded, correct?
Yeah.
So even if it does fail, then we can go.
They can see it on Restoration Movement 2.0.
Right, Restoration Movement 2.0 at YouTube. Okay, so one of the things that you go back to Revelation 13. Let's start there. I think this is if I'm not mistaken, this is the first instance where you see this number 666. And it was depicted as the number of the beast. I'll start around, I don't know, maybe. Yeah, read the beginning of the chapter. Actually, you should start at Revelation 1. So let's start there first. Before we even get started, let's set the context of this book. So Revelation 1, verse 1, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him to show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass. And he sent and signified it by his angel unto his servant John. John is the author of Revelation. Revelation means apocalypsis. It means to reveal. So Christ is being revealed for his second appearing in this. This is what the book of Revelation is doing. Now notice verse 1. It said that God gave this revelation to Jesus Christ to show his servants the things which must shortly come to pass. So right now we have a time statement. Remember I said biblical hermeneutics is very important in this. Time statement is critical in this. The word shortly shortly to come is tachos. It means it's imminent and about to happen. Okay. In verse 3, John goes on and writes, and he says, "Blessed is he that readeth, and they that hear the words of this prophecy, and keep those things which are written therein, for the time is at hand." So now we have, within the first 3 verses, we have 2 time statements, 2 biblical hermeneutical principles. When something is at hand, it means it's within hand's reach. And I've used this over and over. If I want to reach for the doorknob that's 10 feet away from me, it's not at hand. But if I reach over here to the camera, that's at hand's reach. So that shows a complete nearness, and it's about ready to happen. So we have that, correct? So who is the audience in this? So we've established a time statement, the time statements. Who is the audience? Blessed is he that readeth, and they that hear the words of this prophecy. Okay. Verse 7. Behold, he comes with clouds, and every eye shall see him. They which pierced him, all the kindreds of the earth shall well because of him, even so, amen. The kindreds of the earth are the tribes of Israel. And they were the ones who pierced him. They're the one that was guilty of his blood. That is Matthew 23, where Christ said that all the bloodshed going back to Abel was going to fall upon those people, and they were the ones who were guilty for crying out for his crucifixion. In the book of Acts, it's mentioned there. Peter specifically says that they murdered the Son of God. Okay, so John says, in verse 9, I, John, who also am your brother and companion in tribulation. Is John in tribulation today? No. So this tribulation had to take place back when? Back during the time that John was alive. Paul writes about it in 1 Corinthians 7:26, where he's talking about marriage. He said, under the present distress, he was urging people, if they were single, not to get married, and if they were married, not to divorce. And but he said, under the current distress, there's going to be problems, and that was because of this tribulation that was going on. You read Acts, you see all the things that were done to the apostles. They were murdered, and they were beaten, stoned, they were left for dead, and the Christians suffered immense persecution under the Jews and the Roman armies, or the Roman authorities. Okay, so he said he's the companion in tribulation. He said he was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and he heard somebody saying, and it was Christ. Christ said, I am Alpha and Omega, the first and the last. And who thou seest, or what thou seest, write in the book, and send it unto the 7 churches which are in Asia. And then he lists them, unto Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamos, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea. Okay? These 7 churches, these were actual 7 churches in Asia Minor. They were part of the Roman kingdom. They were north, up along the Mediterranean coastline, straight north from land of Canaan and Judea. They are mentioned throughout the New Testament. This is, folks, understand this. This is not talking about the church today. This is talking about the 7 churches that were in Asia. They were actual churches founded during the apostolic period of Christianity. If you read the book of Acts, you can find their names. When you read the epistles, there are still their names in there, and other churches too. Okay. So let's take this audience, which we know is the 7 churches of Asia Minor. Now let's look at some time statements that put those two together. In Revelation 2, John is told to write to Ephesus, the angel in Ephesus. And I'm just going to, in verse 1, chapter 2, and he goes down and Christ is telling them about what he knows about them and where they're lacking. And he says in verse 4, nevertheless, I have somewhat against thee, because thou hast left thy first love. Remember, therefore, from whence thou art fallen, and repent, and do the first works, or else I will come unto thee quickly, and remove thy candlestick out of the place, except thou repent. So, we see the same language that was used in verse 1. If you don't repent, I will come quickly. Well, what happened back during this time of the Roman siege and the Roman wars with Jewish wars, when the Roman armies came along the coastline of the Mediterranean, because they traveled by boat over to the coastline, and they traveled by land. They were pulled from their different battalions and armies throughout all of Rome, and they started marching down through Asia Minor until they got down into Jerusalem. And then they besieged Jerusalem for about 42 months, but they actually withdrew early on in around 65 AD. They were there temporarily and withdrew for no reason. And then they went and gathered more of their army because part of their armies were decimated as they were coming down through the land of Canaan, through the land of Judea, destroying the cities of Jerusalem, and going after the churches. Okay, so Christ is telling them that he is going to come quickly if they don't repent. And in Smyrna, he's verse 8. He's talking to Smyrna now. He says, I know thy works and tribulation and poverty. This is that persecution that's going on. And what happened in this persecution, folks, is that if you were a Jew who converted to Christianity, you were ostracized, you were pushed out of the Jewish economy, the Jewish government, you were persecuted. They would arrest you. In the book of Acts, Paul was given arrest warrants that he received from the high priest and the Jewish council to go out and arrest these Christians to bring them to trial. And they stoned them to death. They beat them to death. They took their property. They took their belongings. They took their money. They would not allow them to do business in the land of Canaan or any cities of Jerusalem. Not just the city of Jerusalem, but all the cities of Jerusalem up along the coastline, up into Smyrna, up into Philadelphia, Sardis, all the way Corinth, Galatians, Ephesus, and all this other, or Galatia and all these other churches. Okay. So he says, I know thy works of poverty, but thou art rich, and I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews. See, I just mentioned these are these Jewish converts. And they are not, but they are the synagogue of Satan. There was only one religion that had a synagogue. That was the Jews. So now we see the Jews being referenced as the synagogue of Satan. So think about that when you think about the beast. Fear none of these things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you in prison. What did I just say? The Jewish council and the high priest were sending out warrants to arrest these people and put them in jail, these Christians. And specifically these Jews who left Judaism and went into Christianity. And he says, you're going to cast some of you in prison, and some of you are going to be tried, some of you are going to have tribulation. But he said, be faithful unto death, and he will give you a crown of life, or that I will give you a crown of life, is what Christ said. Then, verse 12, now he's talking to Pergamos. And he's talking about this Antipas, and he talks about Antipas of Pergamon being martyred in the very city. Well, I did some research on that. What happened was Nero put him to death because he was casting out demons in Pergamos, or in Pergamon, or Pergamum, and he was arrested for sedition and other crimes, and he was burned alive in a boiling vat. Remember, when they did stuff, they were brutal. One of the worst ways to die was through a crucifixion, right? Mm-hmm. But they also boiled people alive. They also put them in drums, or for lack of a better term, they put them in some kind of a metal casing and latched the door down. They couldn't get out, and then they would basically roast them alive over they'd set the thing over a fire and burn them alive. They were just heinous. They were doing everything they could to stamp out Christianity. So, I mean, read through chapters 2 and 3, and you'll see the time statements and who the audience to. That was back then. Okay, anything to add, John? You usually have a lot of profound stuff to add.
I've got so much going through my head. I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. Apparently Facebook changed their setup for live videos, and I have a feeling it doesn't go out to everybody that's on your friends list anymore. Okay. So I'll have to figure that out. But anyway, whoever's with us, I'm glad for that. So okay. So have you identified who the beast is yet?
No.
Okay.
We were going to go to that. Yeah. Okay. See, remember, I'll go back to Revelation chapter 2. Chapter 2, verse 9. this is to the church of Smyrna. Christ says, I know your works and the tribulation and poverty, but you are rich. Well, how are they rich? Well, they're rich because they're Christians. They have life everlasting. Even though their body would die, their soul would live on.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have any better blessing than that. Okay. And he says, and I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. Okay. So you had these Jews who would come in and they would violate every known statute or ordinance of the Mosaic law. And they would try to set traps for the Jewish converts and the Christians in order so that they could get them arrested and charged with blasphemy. And they would blaspheme Christ's name. They would blaspheme God's name. They were just rotten individuals. As a matter of fact, there's probably never been, well, I just said, there has never been a more evil generation than that generation between AD 30 to about AD 70. If you kill and or you murder the very Son of God, you can't get more evil than that. Okay, so he says that they are the synagogue of Satan. What does Satan mean in Latin?
Deceiver.
Yeah, deceiver, adversary.
Adversary.
Yeah. And I think it's actually pronounced Satan or something like that. Okay, so he tells them not to fear these things that are going to come upon him. Fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil, Satan, shall cast some of you into prison, that you may be tried, and you shall have tribulation 10 days. Now, this 10 days is a figurative language, and I can tell you what I think it means, but I can't prove it. But be thou faithful unto death, and I will give you a crown of life. And he tells them, he that has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says unto the churches. He that overcomes shall not be hurt of the second death. So what's the first death? Physical death? Under the second death would be spiritual death. If you're faithful unto death, they would not die again. Their soul would not be destroyed. Okay, they would actually receive a crown of life.
You want to know why they received the crown of life?
Yes.
Go back to verse 9.
Okay.
I know your tribulation and your poverty, but you are rich. This is the reason that they received the crown of life. But this poverty is not the contrast, the poverty and the richness. That's not what makes a person be saved. I actually heard somebody say on Facebook this week that because they're poor and they don't have any money, that they can go to heaven. And the rich man cannot go to heaven. And they quoted, it's harder for the camel to go through the eye of the needle than for a rich man to go to heaven. And they really think that means a camel can go through the eye of a needle easier than it is for a rich man to make it to heaven. That's not what it's talking about. Let me show you. Matthew chapter 5.
Okay.
Verse 3. We all know these Beatitudes. But I see the Beatitudes in a whole different way now than I did before, now that I understand eschatology, now that I have learned to think more like a Jew. And I'm not all the way there, but I think I'm getting closer. Matthew 5, verse 3, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Okay. This poor in spirit means not spiritually arrogant.
Right.
That's what makes you rich. Not being spiritually arrogant. So when you've got this guy like Patrick Andrews,
Mm-hmm.
and he's calling us every name in the book without cussing us out, and he accuses our brethren like Roy of being rapists when it comes to the scriptures. Just horrible, horrible imagery and language. Why anybody would ever use that? It's beyond me. Well, actually, I get it. It's desperation. But those are people who the scriptures say, I'm not pointing the finger. I'm not saying that I'm not the one condemning them. They do this to themselves.
Right.
The reason the people at Smyrna were guaranteed a crown of life is because their heart was good. They were not spiritually arrogant. There you go. That's it.
That's right.
I mean, we could go through the rest of the Beatitudes, and you see eschatology through this now, and it's amazing, but super, super powerful.
Well, this is why it says that blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Well, now you have a whole form of religion. I'm kind of sidetracking, but that's what the Bible does. That's why you have to study it all the time, I suppose. That's why God designed it this way.
Mm-hmm.
Because now you have a whole religion coming and saying, well, the earth is never going to be destroyed. Mankind, time will end, but the earth is going to remain, and the meek will inherit this earth. Well, they're also going to inherit the heaven. And that's what happens. They inherit the heaven and the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the Christians. But it's not speaking about the rocks and minerals planet Earth. It's talking about the new covenant. They inherit the new covenant.
That's right.
Okay.
Oh, I'm not loving this new setup, guys. Sorry about all this. It's really affected the whole program tonight, really.
Yeah, it's kind of thrown me for a loop. So,
Well, the whole layout here is totally different. So anyway.
okay. So let's get to this mark of the beast. The first mention of it is in Revelation 13. And I'll just go down verse 15 and talking about this beast. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, and the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark of the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666, or 666. Now there's some controversy on is it really 666 or was it another 616? I'm not going to get into that. We can go all night just talking about the different beliefs on that. But the key of it is, it says that it is a man. Okay, that's the key. That's what we need to look at.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Wait, which beast are you talking about?
Well, you just want to go back. You want to.
Sorry.
Well, I was going to try to avoid that, but so we got to go back to.
And here I had to open that can.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Revelation 13:1. Maybe. Should go back to chapter 12.
You can just explain it without having to read it all. Essentially, there's two beasts.
There's two beasts. Yeah. There's a sea beast and a land beast. Okay.
Chapter 13.
Yeah.
Pretty much just sums that up.
Yeah. So, is this a beast that comes up out of the ground, or is it a beast that comes up out of the sea like the Loch Ness monster, or what's that, the mega shark, or whatever? Anything you can let your imagination take you to. Or is it figurative language talking about something else? Yeah. And if you study the Old Testament, remember I said the Old Testament is very critical in our understanding of the New Testament. As a matter of fact, you can't understand the New Testament without knowing at least or some, or maybe even a lot of the Old Testament.
Right.
Especially the prophecies. So we have a sea beast. We have two beasts, and we have a dragon, involved in this too. So the sea beast basically is the army, the Roman army, or the Gentile armies. The land beasts would be the beasts that were of the Jewish nation or the Jews. And during this time of tribulation that John was speaking about, and at the beginning of Revelation, they were working in concert together. The Jews used the Roman authority to execute people, but they also used the authority of the high priest and the Jewish council to arrest these people. And then if they were a Jew and they were under the Roman province, or they were born a Roman, they could appeal to Rome as a defense. And we see that Paul did do that, because Paul was a Roman, but he's also a Pharisee. So he was Jewish. He was a Jew born in Rome, correct?
Right.
Okay. So with it being the Roman kingdom, they had to satisfy the laws of Rome. And so they basically, even Rome even put some of the Jewish leaders into the Roman Senate. There were a few of them in there to make peace and to work with the Jews, because the Jews, they were a mighty nation. They were a nation of many, many people. And I think that the Caesars were just a little bit afraid of them, but not much, but just a little bit afraid of them because they knew the history of that nation.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so any more? Do you need any more?
Well, just to prove,
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned the analogy of faith a moment ago. Well, here it is.
Mm-hmm.
Notice that it's talking about in chapter 13, the beast comes up from the sea, or out of the sea, and so forth. Notice how he explains it. Verse 5, there was given to him a mouth speaking arrogant words and blasphemies, and authority to act for 42 months. Well, who's the 42 months? The times, and half times
Mm-hmm.
of Daniel 12. Well, that was these Romans. This is exactly what you said. But this is just telling you who the beast is. So you really don't have to go any further than this, other than you could go to Isaiah 60. Isaiah 60. See, here's the thing. This is what Trent was saying. If you skip fully 3/4 of God's inspired word and count it as rubbish,
Which many Christians do, because they
do.
think it was nailed to the cross and it was done away with.
Right. So that creates a serious problem. You will never be able to understand the things in the new covenant without understanding the things of the old covenant.
So,
Jesus clearly said that, John 5:44-47. You cannot understand my words if you do not understand the words of Moses. Just paraphrasing it. That's what Jesus said. Okay, so anyway, in Isaiah 60, verse 1 says, Arise, shine, for your light has come. The glory of the Lord has risen upon you. For behold, darkness will cover the earth, and deep darkness the peoples. But the Lord will rise upon you, and his glory will appear upon you. So who is he talking to? He's talking to people. Then he uses names for them other than saying people. Nations will come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your rising. So who are the nations? Well, they're people. Who are the kings? They're people. Lift up your eyes round about and see. They all gather together. They come to you. Your sons will come from afar. Your daughters will be carried in the arms. Then you will see and be radiant, and your heart will thrill and rejoice, because the abundance of the sea will be turned to you. So the abundance of the sea is these Gentiles.
right. The actual, in the King James, verse 3, it doesn't say nations, it says Gentiles.
Gentiles.
And in verse 5, it mentions the sea shall be converted unto the forces of the Gentiles.
Although they're right, they shouldn't have done that.
Right.
Because it is nations.
Yeah, it is. It's all nations.
Which, we can live with that. But this is very interesting. Notice what is the time when the abundance of the sea, or the Gentiles, will be given to them? At the time when the gospel is preached. We saw that gospel going forth on Pentecost. That's fulfillment of all sorts of prophecies in the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, living waters flow from Mount Zion. So you've got that time, and that's when the sea is roaring, and then these Gentiles are coming to the Lord. So what time is that? That's in the 1st century. Notice what it says in verse 10. Foreigners will build up your walls, and their kings will minister to you. For my wrath, in my wrath I struck you, and in my favor I have compassion on you. Your gates will be open continually. Does this sound familiar? They will not be closed day or night, so that men may bring to you the wealth of the nations with their kings led in procession. I know exactly where you're turning.
Okay.
Go ahead and read it.
Okay.
Guys, this is amazing. And you would never make this connection if we don't understand or read the Old Testament. So, I'm not even looking. You're turning to Revelation 21, aren't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I need my pen. I gotta mark some. I got to put a thing here. Somehow I need some. I got one of these cheap Bibles.
How about that? Will that work?
Not cheap Bible. I got. It's a really nice Bible, but it doesn't have any markers in there. Okay.
No markers.
No
ribbons.
No, it has. Yeah. No.
You need to talk to Brent Bishop.
I have.
Have him make it cover with about 400 ribbons in it.
I need it. Yeah, I should do that. I'd send it off.
It's amazing what he does.
Yeah, I've seen his work. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Revelation 21.
Okay, so we see this new heaven and an earth coming down, this new Jerusalem coming out of heaven, and around he describes the gates of it and all of this. John mentioned earlier in Isaiah 60. And around verse 22, he says, "And I saw no temple therein, the Lord God Almighty, and the Lamb are the temple of it. And the city had no need of the sun, neither of the moon, to shine in it, for the glory of God did lighten it, and the Lamb is the light thereof. And the nations of them which are saved shall walk in the light of it, and the kings of the earth do bring their glory and honor into it. And the gates of it shall not be shut at all by day, for there shall be no night there. And they shall bring the glory and honor of the nations into it. And there shall no wise enter anything that defiles, neither whatsoever works abominations or makes a lie, but they which are written in the Lamb's book of life." Okay. This is a fulfillment of Isaiah 60.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. See, either this has happened or Christianity is nothing. I mean,
it had to have already happened.
Either it has happened or, like I said, Christianity is just a...
So this New Jerusalem, what is it? Is it heaven?
It's the new covenant. It's the church.
Comes down out of heaven.
Yeah.
You notice it never goes back up?
That's right. Oh, there's so many. I mean, John,
That alone.
how long have we been doing this? 2 or 3 years now, maybe?
As long as we've been trying to debate Welch.
Yeah, over 3 years.
3
yeah.
years.
So,
We'll be doing it another 3 years before it ever
and
happens.
there's no way that you can discuss all of the elements involved in this. You can't do it.
I know.
There's not enough
and
time.
you're constantly learning more
Mm-hmm.
and seeing more of it. And it's just amazing, the power of this truth. Just amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, it's wonderful. Okay, so where do you want to go from here? Do you want me to go back into chapter 13?
Man.
Or do you want to go someplace else?
Can I show you Isaiah 26 in relation to
Yeah.
what you just said?
Yeah. Let me
Okay.
mark this here real quick.
Okay, so go back to Isaiah.
Isaiah 26.
Now, keep in mind, Isaiah 60 had just said that the Gentiles will be flowing into the open gates of heaven.
And they are a sea.
Right. Now, notice Isaiah talks about this same thing in Isaiah 26, verse 2.
Actually, verse 1.
Yeah, you gotta go back to verse 1. In that day, this song will be sung in the land of Judah. We have a strong city. He sets up walls and ramparts for security. Open the gates that the righteous nation may enter, the one that remains faithful. Okay, so what is this? It's the exact same thing, the exact same context. This is what Trent was talking about. When does this happen? Verse 5. For he has brought low those who dwell on high, the unassailable city. Well, when does that happen? When is it brought low? Destroyed, never rebuilt. 70 AD.
70 AD.
He lays it low. He lays it to the ground. He casts it to the dust. The foot will trample it. Who trampled this?
Yeah, and King James says the foot shall tread it down.
By who?
Well,
Gentiles.
By the Gentiles.
The roaring of the sea.
You go in Revelation 11 or 11. That's a good one. How you like that?
That's pretty good.
Uh,
I remember that.
Revelation 11:1 is what I meant to say.
Right.
1 and 2, actually the whole chapter, but I'll read real quick here.
Okay.
John was given to read Revelation 11:1, and there was given me to read like unto a rod. And the angel said, saying, Rise and measure the temple of God and the altar and them that worship therein. But the court which is without the temple leave out, and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread underfoot 42 months.
You would never get that. You'd never make that connection without studying the Old Testament. And I'm not saying that I know all of it, but you know something? The small portion of it that I know just blows me away.
Mm-hmm.
And when I see the context of it, it's even better. So listen to this, Isaiah chapter 26. This is the time of the 42 months when the Gentiles are treading down underfoot the holy city. It's going to be destroyed, never rebuilt, according to the scriptures. And listen to this. Verse 7. The way of the righteous is smooth, O upright one. Make the path of the righteous level. Indeed, while following the way of your judgments, O Lord, we have waited for you eagerly. There's this motif about eager anticipation. We see it several times in the New Testament. This is where it comes from. We have waited for you eagerly. Your name, even your memory, is the desire of our souls. What was the desire? To be reunited with their Father.
To be, fellowship again. Mm-hmm.
Has that happened yet, or are we still waiting for that in the future?
Right. Yeah. If it hasn't happened, then why are you praying to
Our
God?
erring brethren teach that
It's not happening.
we're not reunited with our Father.
But they'll stand up there and they'll say, 3 or 4 prayers in a service?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
It's amazing.
Anyway, okay, there you go. There's a whole lot more that we can go through there, but that does it for me anyway.
Okay. So
Sorry, that was a 10-minute deviation.
no, that's fine. I think everything is, but it's within context, and that's
Right.
what's key. Because we just can't read Revelation. You can't read the New Testament and not have something to show the proof of it. Because this analogy of faith, that the Bible doesn't conflict itself; it defines itself. It doesn't conflict; it defines it. Okay, so I think Revelation 19. Let me go back, or Revelation 20. Then we see this again. This thing about the beast and the mark. Okay. In Revelation 20, and I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. He laid hold of the dragon, the old serpent, which is the devil, and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years, and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more till 1,000 years should be fulfilled, and after that he must be loosed a little season. And I saw thrones, and they that sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus, and for the word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, nor had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands, and they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. So this is a lot of imagery, figurative language, that why you struggle with it today? Because you think about it in 21st century English understanding, you don't understand it from first century Jewish Christians or Christians, period. They understood this language. They knew what it meant.
Right.
Okay.
The Gentiles knew what it meant.
Okay.
To a degree.
Right.
You want to know why?
Why?
Because most of the converted Gentiles were already converted Jews. They were proselytes.
Right.
So they had a lot of this training already.
Mm-hmm.
And then those newly converted, and I think there's a good illustration of that with the guy in Acts 10, Cornelius.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he was a proselyte or not, but it sure sounds awful suspicious.
Yeah, it sounds more, kind of leans towards that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He knew an awful lot about the Jewish religion.
And he knew who God was.
He was
Because he was praying to him
Right.
quite a bit.
Yeah. Sorry.
So now we'll talk about what this written on the foreheads and in the hands and the mark.
Yeah, we haven't even got to that.
Yeah, you want to do that from Ezekiel? Want to take that from the point of Ezekiel?
We can.
Okay. So Ezekiel 9.
Yep.
You need to read all of Ezekiel.
You need to read all of the Old Testament.
Yeah. And really study it.
Just read it all the rest this week.
Yeah, you got plenty of time. You can't go to any sporting
Right, you
events.
can't do anything.
You can't go out to a restaurant. Okay.
Okay, so you've got this this mark of these beasts that we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at this idea of a mark, okay, this can go either way. You can be marked for salvation, or you can be marked for destruction. So we
As an illustration today, how would that be? Like you go into a neighborhood that is going to be a neighborhood that has been abandoned and sold. You see, they go and they mark these houses to be destroyed.
Right.
But they don't mark the houses that are not going to be destroyed.
Yeah, kind of like at a hurricane or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, the insurance company will go through and they'll just mark up the ones that need to be leveled, and the ones that can be saved, they save them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, this isn't any rocket science here.
Yeah. What a wise man, a wise drummer said that if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice.
A wise drummer?
Yeah.
Who was that?
A wise man, Neil Peart.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Rush.
Okay. I did not know that.
He said, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice.
Right.
So either you're marked one way or you're marked another way.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're still marked.
Okay. So here's a quick illustration how God marks people, and how people are marked either for salvation or destruction. Ezekiel 9:1, and then he cried out in my hearing with a loud voice, saying, "Draw near, O executioners of the city, each with his destroying weapon in his hand." So, people are going to die. Behold, 6 men came from the direction of the upper gate, which faces north, each with his shattering weapon in his hand, and among them was a certain man clothed in linen, which this is information that we see in Revelation. So who are these clothed in linen? Okay. With a writing case at his loins. In other words, this is someone who's pure. And they went and stood beside the bronze altar. Then the glory of the Lord of all Israel went up from the cherub on which it had been to the threshold of the temple, and he called to the man clothed in linen, at whose loins was the writing case. And the Lord said to him, "Go through the midst of the city, even through the midst of Jerusalem, and put a mark on the foreheads of the men who sigh and groan over the abominations which are being committed in its midst." So these are the average guys. These are the people with a good heart, and they look at what's going on and they just go, "Really? Again? What's wrong with these guys?" Kind of like we do with our leaders quite often. So these are the people that are marked for salvation. Listen to this. Verse 5, "But the others, he said in my hearing, go through the city after him and strike. Do not let your eye have pity, and do not spare." So you had ones that were marked for salvation. They're going to be spared. Then these others, by not being marked in this sense, they were the ones who were not spared.
They were marked for death.
They were marked for death. Right.
Destruction.
Yeah. Then he says, "Do not let your eye have pity, and do not spare. Utterly slay old men, young men, maidens, little children, and women. Do not touch any man on whom is the mark, and you shall start from my sanctuary." So there it is. Then there's really a whole lot more to that story, but that gives you kind of the basic gist of this idea of being marked. Now, if you were a Jew and you had heard this idea of having a mark on your forehead or on your hand or something,
So
this imagery would come to your mind, and you would get it.
yeah. So here's the thing. if you read on in further into this chapter, remember we said there was a sea beast and an earth beast or a land beast.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll read on in verse 8. And it came to pass while they were slaying them, and I was left, and I fell. This is Ezekiel. And I fell upon my face and cried and said, Ah, Lord God, wilt thou destroy all the residue of Israel in thy pouring out of thy fury upon Jerusalem? Then said he unto me, the iniquity of the house of Israel and Judah is exceeding great, and the land is full of blood, and the city full of perverseness. For they say, the Lord hath forsaken the earth, and the Lord seeketh not. So you see there this imagery of their being forsaken the earth, the because of no pity for them. The earth was forsaken, or the city, Judah and Jerusalem. The land was full of blood and the earth. So the Jews were forsaken in this pity. And it says, the Lord hath forsaken the earth, and the Lord seeketh not. And as for me also, mine eyes shall not spare, neither will I have pity, but I will recompense their way upon their head. And behold, the man clothed with linen, which had the inkhorn by his side, reported the matter, saying, I have done as thou hast commanded me. So we see the sea being the Gentiles, the land or the earth being the Jews.
Right.
So you see these two beasts. So we see the Gentiles working with the Jews in an attempt to destroy Christianity in Revelation. So you began to speak about the imagery of the forehead and the mark of the beast on the forehead and in the right hand. What is significant about the right hand? As even I think you hear this term in the New Testament, right hand of fellowship,
Right.
because that's how you greet.
Christ sat on the right hand of the Father, and
Right.
they wanted to sit on the right hand of Jesus. Yeah. It just illustrates this idea of authority, of acceptance, of
and fellowship.
fellowship.
Yeah. So earlier I mentioned when John was working with the computer, I mentioned about what you sacrificed as a Jewish convert to Christianity, and or as a proselyte Jew who converted to Christianity, and the Gentiles who fell into that. There were very specific laws in the Old Testament, the law of Moses or the Mosaic covenant, that dealt with business, on how business and religion and worship. And then there were strict laws that the Jews had and how they dealt with Gentiles. And many of the Jews considered the Gentiles dogs, especially the Samaritans who were Jewish, by birth, but had basically left fellowship with the Jews. So the I lost my train of thought for a second here. What was I talking about? You lost it too.
Well,
so this fellowship.
I was getting back on the beast. Sorry.
Okay, so what happens with this right hand of fellowship is that when you are in fellowship with someone, you would shake their hand, and also the priestly garments that were worn for the high priest as he did his duties in the temple, especially in the holiest of holies, that there were marks upon his mitre that he wore and his garments that showed his authority as the high priest to serve in the temple, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when this persecution was going on, as I was saying, that these laws, and as these people left, they were arresting them, they were taking everything they owned, they were destroying their families. They suffered great persecution. So here it is. they basically forced these Jewish Christians to either give up all they had or go back into Judaism. And the book of Hebrews is a reminder to the Jews not to go back into that old covenant system and leave Christianity, because their salvation was at hand, and Christ was going to appear a second time for salvation instead of appearing like he did the first time for their sins. So we see this admonishment throughout these epistles talking about not to abandon Christianity, not to go back to that, not to go back and receive that mark of the beast again. Don't, because that was the sting of death is sin. The sin is the law. Paul said that. So if you were going to go back into fellowship, you were going to go back into Judaism, you were going to go back into sin and back into the law, and you were going to die. And that's exactly what happened in 70 AD. The Jewish nation was wiped off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
Because of it. And that's a fulfillment of Ezekiel, a myriad of Old Testament prophecies. So that's a short answer for for a very short answer for this, for a short explanation.
Yeah, and it still took an hour, almost.
Or better, an hour, yeah.
Yeah, well, we spent 20, 25 minutes, pretty easy, on John Welch. That's never going to happen.
Well, yeah.
But it's all on him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just simply all on him. If he wants to, he can. That's all he has to do is say yes.
Yeah, you're about the most accommodating minister I've ever been around, and if this can't get done, then it's all on John. It's all on him. I think he's trying to pat it to where he has the biggest advantage that a man could possibly have, and so he can just sit up there and pound his chest.
Well, he doesn't have the truth, so it really doesn't matter.
Right, but in his mind, and the people who are going to attend that debate in his favor, they just want the one little thing.
Yeah,
that's all they care about.
Yeah, I have a feeling. No. See, those tactics are what a fifth grader does in gym when they're playing basketball, and he lets the air out of the ball so the other team doesn't, can't score. So
or out in recess, he goes out and he picks up 5 of the, he's got a bullying attitude. And he picks up 4 other guys that are very good in basketball, and they go up to the short guys, the athletic guys, and they say, "Hey, let's play a pick-up game of basketball." And they run them over, they crush them, because, and they wouldn't do it any other way because they can't stand the chance of losing in their mind.
Yeah.
And once in a while, David does slew Goliath.
Yeah. Sometimes David prevails. Okay. Well, that does us in for the most part for this evening. Hey, whoever is with us tonight, we appreciate that a whole bunch. We'll get this figured out and get notifications out to everybody for the next time. I don't know what's going on here, but I will figure it out. They keep changing all this stuff, even on YouTube. So I imagine there must be some kind of law that's going into effect, or who knows what. Probably something with the coronavirus.
Or they're trying to cut the memory use back or something. Who knows?
I really think they're trying to discourage this kind of use, but
possibly.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of frivolous videos, water skiing squirrels, and hey, that stuff's fun. I'd rather see that than some of the other stuff you see on TV. Okay, so other than Oak Island, I like that. That's fun. It's kind of like these guys spending money on a $10 billion lottery ticket just to get nothing. But I don't know, maybe they will. Information they're digging up.
I would just love to know how they can go out and persuade people to back them like they have. All of these people that do these ventures. How in the world did they do that?
Look at all the you know, that's the #1 show on cable TV.
Oh, it is. Oak Island, The Curse of Oak Island.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah. So
I watched it for a little while.
so that tells
To me,
you.
it's kind of like hunting for Bigfoot. It's just not there.
Right. Bigfoot's there. Bigfoot's real.
Okay.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and sign off. Okay, everybody, we just want to say thank you. We love you all, and we'll be back here next week. We'll get all this technology figured out, and then they'll change it again. But we'll be back next week, same time. Tell everybody, share this video. Go to Restoration Movement 2.0 on YouTube and sign up, subscribe, and hit the like button. Make all the comments that you want, good, bad, indifferent. It does not matter. We're thankful that you're here.
And Nancy Baker, won't you call in?
Yeah.
Pat Andrews, call in.
Yeah. I don't know if that's going to happen. So anyway.
We'll keep studying together, and hopefully we can show ourselves approved.
Yeah. Well, that's what it's all about. Okay. Well, we'll have a little bumper music here as we close. Thank y'all. We'll see you next time.
My life must shine, my life must shine along the way. I'll sing His praise, while ages roll, and strive to help some troubled soul. Life's evening sun is seeking.